Hey everyone, my name is Aspen Dudzic and I'm your host for Forestry Talks, a podcast that explores all things forestry in Alberta. And today I'm super thrilled to be joined by Lema, the manager of business development for Western Archrib. Andre, how are you doing?
Great, thanks for having me on, Aspen.
I'm super excited. Super excited to have you here. And I think in particular what I'm looking forward to about this podcast is to kind of explore a different side of forestry. So I think for some of our previous episodes, we've had a little bit more of a focus on the forest itself, maybe the management, but this is an opportunity to talk about what happens to the trees after the forest and maybe some of those unique applications.
Yeah, it's interesting that is the subject today because we've been exploring that at Western Archrib as well. And for those that don't know, we're a glulam manufacturer, so we do mass timber buildings. And but the knowledge of people now, they want to know, where did the wood come from? Is it from a sustainable forest? Is it sustainably harvested? Is everything being taken care of in the forest? But that so kind of seeing it from the other side coming backwards is kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get into that a little bit later because I do want to talk about the recent acquisition and some of the partnership and kind of what's created there. But you mentioned glulam, and so I want to get into what is Western Archrib? What is your business all about? What is glulam?
Yeah. So Western Archrib, a 70-year-old company that was recently acquired, but it was up till then it had been a 3-generation family-run Alberta business. And glue laminating is, as the name describes, laminating wood together with glue. So it's described, I think, as a waterborne adhesive that's applied with pressure to wood to make it, I always describe it as making small pieces of wood bigger.
There you go. And that's how you end up with something called mass timber.
Yes.
And what is up with mass timber? Tell me a little bit about this journey that we've seen in the last couple years, how this material is being used, what's so special about it? Yeah,
so a couple things. It's not new to Western Archrib mass timber, just to be clear. We've been doing mass timber all along. With the new, some new processes of glue laminating, CLT, and some others that sort of do a similar process. It's brought a lot more abilities of the industry to deliver on bigger projects, on projects of larger scale. There were some building code changes just a few years ago in Alberta and Canada, internationally really, that kind of changed what mass timber now can do. So, but by definition, mass timber is big wood.
Big wood.
Yeah.
And with big wood, we can make big buildings.
Correct.
Yeah. So what are some of those really cool projects that you're excited about?
Oh yeah, so we've done, I guess historically, we did a lot of churches. Wood, as everybody probably on this podcast knows, wood is beautiful. I don't have to explain that to anybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody's always drawn to it. So it was always a natural for churches and public buildings, be it a recreation center or a school or these types of things. In Edmonton, we've got many in the River Valley that were done back in the 70s that are still in use today. And
no kidding.
Yeah, and so with that, sort of the evolution of the mass timber then came with these other products coming online, building code changes, going bigger, better, longer, a lot of technology changes. What we can do now in our shop, and I think I took you on a tour there once, but it was
a lot of fun.
Yeah, big tools. The CNC equipment that we used to cut it, that technology just wasn't there before in terms of how we would model it with our draftsmen and engineers, and then moving into how it gets cut. Those types of things just weren't available back 20, 30 years ago. So now we have the technology to do efficient connections, to do really good, accurate work within 2 millimeters, and it's moved the industry along in a big way. Yeah.
So some of these technical advances, they've enabled you to create the product in a way that's maybe going to be more beneficial for engineers, or what's the kind of value add or the benefit of that?
Yeah, the technology is certainly, it's done two things. One, it's improved accuracy. So we're generally more accurate than arguably many of the other structural components on any given project. And then to be able to do that in a call it an economical manner, that you can do it at scale and you can do it with accuracy and pump out a lot of volume is the bottom line. Mm-hmm. And if you can do that, then you can deliver a job when it needs to be done, not just, we got it done to this, level of accuracy. Well, it just took too long. The project moved on. You can't have that. So it needs to be done efficiently and accurately.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's also one of the really big sells about mass timber is some of the prefab opportunities, like jobs, projects are able to get done a lot more quickly and efficiently. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, you understand it perfectly. It's because we're doing a lot of what we call pre-construction. Mm-hmm. So we're figuring all this stuff out before it goes to the site. So when it goes to the site, it just shows up as a kit of parts. It goes together, picture Lego blocks stacking together and going up and building a building. And that's how you gain a lot of efficiencies. It is more onerous on the front end. So you have to have all those details sorted out, all those things that maybe weren't considered in the early stages. But with 3D modeling now and BIM software exchange of knowledge, it changes how we're able to do business. So the front end work is big, but on the back end, when it goes to the site, it's ready to go and goes up fast.
Yeah, things have come so far, really. Yeah, and I'm sure that's one of the many questions that you get in your role as manager of business development. What might be some of the other big questions that you get?
What's the budget?
Yeah.
I think that's a question for everybody everywhere all the time. What does a new car cost? What does this table cost? What does everything? So that's a lot personally, that's a lot of my work.
Yeah.
Getting systems that will work and guiding designers to the best, to the sort of the best system or the most economical or the most appropriate for what they're asking for. Yeah. That's a lot of what I do. And getting people, spreading the word. Talking to engineers and architects and owners that may not know much about mass timber, because it still is early days for mass timber. Wood's been around since man showed up on Earth. We've used that as a building material all along our history as a race. But using it in this manner and using it smart and wise and without waste, that makes a big difference in how the industry moves forward.
Yeah, and I mean, something that we're seeing is there are certain parts of the country that are a little bit maybe further along in this journey of recognizing and appreciating and utilizing mass timber in their own construction. There's a great example of the Brock Commons University in BC. Yeah. It's an 18-story wood building. I mean, that's something that I couldn't have been able to conceive years ago, right?
Yeah.
So what's maybe driving some of the change where in BC or other parts of the country, there's a lot of interest in this, and now Alberta, we're starting to look at it. Why are people interested in this product?
Yeah, I think, call it that carbon sequestering, that's front of mind with everybody. Starts with the federal government. Starts with, globally, we're all concerned about global warming.
Big time.
And the next step is reduce our carbon footprint. And wood checks that box 100 times over with, it's a renewable, regrows itself.
Yeah.
It sequesters carbon. And so I think that's part of the big driver of our awareness as humans as to where we need to be and what we need to be using for our building materials, because we still have to build housing and buildings for people to live and work in, and so we need to do that with the best possible methods that we can.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of people are perceiving this, rightly so, as a green alternative or a green building material alternative.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, part of the part of the pushback is often about fire. So we'll get, and I don't mean forest fires, I mean more on does the building burn? And
of course, yeah.
And so with mass timber, it's a bit of a different dynamic picture how you can light a match and a match will burn. But if you try and light a 2x4 or something like that with a Bic lighter, well, gee, not much happens there, right? So this charring effect is how mass timber gets designed. So the char on the outside, if it does catch fire, or if there's a fire in the building rather, then this charring effect will insulate the inside of the beam or column and keep it from getting too far along. So that's often, but the other thing that people don't often realize is when we design a building, it's for a given fire resistance rating. So it'll be a 45-minute, 1 hour, 2 hour fire resistance. And that doesn't matter, the material notwithstanding, that's the requirement for the building. So wood has to stand on its own in terms of what it can resist for fire resistance.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting. So, my colleagues, of course, from the Woodworks program, they were telling me they'd attended this fire demonstration, I guess it was called,
Yes.
somewhere
In Ottawa.
It was Ottawa, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh wow, that sounds really cool. Like they're going to be trying to light some buildings on fire. And so I asked them when they came back, I said, well, how was the fire demonstration? And they said, well, it was, anticlimactic because surprise, surprise, it didn't go on fire. And that's kind of the whole purpose of that demonstration, right?
Yeah. So that was an interesting study they did. And so the full scale, I think it was a 2 or 3 story mass timber building, and all the manufacturers from across the country contributed materials to this building. And yeah, they lit it in all kinds of different ways, from short and long term and different accelerants. And at the end of the day, yeah, they took the building apart and they're using those beams and columns for other things now.
You know what? It was a great experiment because it really proves the validity of this as a building material, right? Yeah. What are some of the other surprises that people have when they learn about mass timber?
Yeah, I'd say, the speed of construction, we talked a little bit about that, but that is a sort of a kind of a benefit that people need to live to believe, because people say, oh yeah, okay, I don't believe that. Necessarily, I shouldn't say they don't, but it's hard to prove. It's just somebody saying it, but people on their second building or third building, they realize the benefits of it. Some of the other things that are sort of, call it secondary, is the construction site is very quiet. So when the Brock Commons, for example, when it was going up, it was the sound of the odd impact drill putting in screws, but I think it was a 4-man crew that put up 18 stories, and they were doing a floor a week.
A 4-man crew.
I might be exaggerating on that, but it was a small crew.
That's incredible.
Unlike other, take concrete, you have a crew of guys, a number of guys or girls that have to pour and get the material up there and then wait for it to cure and all that sort of stuff. Versus wood is on call it a multi-story building, then your floors are cured and ready to go for the next floor as soon as they're installed.
Yeah.
Some of the other things, the biophilia, we touched on that a little bit, is I think people always enjoy being in any kind of a wood building. I mean, here we see wood all around in this building too, just because of that biophilic effect. And it's interesting. I always like going back to the buildings we put up, and then, whether it's in a pool, the lifeguard or something that's, just sort of, hey, how do you like working in this building? Invariably, oh, this is so awesome. I can't believe this is a beautiful building. I love being in here and working in here. And, that's, it's hard to quantify that for an owner. It's hard for them to sort of say, well, I can't put a number to that. But in fact, some buildings that not necessarily ones we did, but in Oregon, there's a builder there that does only mass timber buildings. And they do it for a commercial retail space, and they do it because they get a higher value, or they get more rent money for it than a similar build square footage wise than they would without a wood building. And they said, well, ours are rented, theirs are not.
Yeah. So, simple measure.
Yeah. And they get more money for it. So
yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the idea or the concept of biophilic design, because I think we're seeing a lot of, like you mentioned, hospitals that are starting to use mass timber, and maybe some of like the mental health or the healing benefits of finding those unique ways to introduce nature into the built environment. Have you worked on lots of projects like that? Or
lots. I can think of even some. Some are quite old. Credit Valley Hospital. They did that cancer center there. They chose wood just because they knew that it had, even then they recognized there's people want to be here, they'll heal better, they'll faster potentially being in these. The other group that really appreciates wood buildings and the look of wood is the Indigenous groups. And they are all about, when we get involved in those projects, they always appreciate the look and the feel and how it's, it brings you closer to nature. And I think that's an important aspect for them.
Yeah, there's a great project that I saw that came across by LinkedIn, and I'm not going to remember the name of it, but it was for a cultural center, maybe. Is that ringing any bells for you?
Métis Cultural Center, just east of Edmonton.
Was that one of your projects?
Yep.
Yeah. And when did that wrap up?
So that was a 2 parts. They did a sort of a cultural center with a hall, and they did some. It's right along the North Saskatchewan, beautiful location, and they do, celebrations out there. I think you just rent it. And then they did Métis Crossing. They did that as an additional. Actually, that project just won a Wood Design Award.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And the phase 2 was a hotel that they added on, and they'll do catered events, and or you can just go stay there.
And all with mass timber.
All with mass timber.
Yeah, that's incredible. There's, I was watching a TED Talk from Michael Green. He's an architect from, is he based
Vancouver.
in BC? Vancouver, yeah. And I love, he shares this one remark. He builds, lots of buildings, of course, buildings of concrete, steel, mass timber. And he said that something that he's observed over time, the difference between how people interact in his steel and concrete buildings versus the mass timber, the wood buildings. And he said he can almost guarantee anytime he's in a mass timber building, he'll see somebody, touching the wood or like holding a wooden beam. And, it's that connection to nature. People aren't doing that with concrete pillars or steel. Can you imagine? But there's just something about that, bringing nature into the built environment that's so special.
And Michael Green is a great advocate for wood construction or mass timber construction. But and we all understand it. You see a nice table like this, and you just want to touch it and feel it and be connected to it.
Yeah, so. I'm already trying to figure out how to get mass timber in my house. So I'll give you a call, Andrea. Yeah, that's awesome. So what's kind of new with Western Archrib? I think there's been maybe some changes in the last couple months, maybe. Any kind of exciting projects you want to share?
The Fargies that own Western Archrib since 1951 sold it to the private enterprise Northland Forest Products, which is a family enterprise. Also, the Washcos own that, and they bought Western Archrib. And it's interesting because they're we've worked with Northlands for a long time. They were a supplier of ours for lamb stock for making spruce glulam, and we did their office and sort of knew them pretty well. So that they were the new purchaser, we were all pretty happy about. And that it's a privately owned Alberta company was was very, very nice for as an employee that happened. So that's been quite a bit of change actually, because they're very growth oriented. They want to be the primary manufacturing facility for glulam of North America. Awesome. So it's some lofty goals to that end. They've already secured a facility to manufacture glulam in a much bigger scale just north of Edmonton in Sturgeon County. So that's
amazing.
Sort of in the works, and there'll be more. Stay tuned. There's more coming on that.
Yeah. And, that's so exciting. I'll have to have you back. Do you have any sense about maybe some of the job creation that will result in, or too soon to say?
It'll be in the, it doesn't change us from a small, medium enterprise to a large, but it's still in the, I'd call it up to 100 new employees would be not probably not out of the realm of what we should see. Yeah,
that's incredible. That's really exciting.
Yes. Well, it is, because we've been in this facility for a long time, so seeing all the new equipment that we can be involved in, it's very exciting.
Yeah. Something that you touched on a little bit earlier was how being in this business on the product side of things, a lot of the times you'll have questions about, well, where is this material coming from? And so now with this connection to Northland, which is a great group of folks, you have that, I guess, richer connection to what is happening in the forest. And we were chatting a little bit previously. Now it's like, this whole enterprise is everything from the seedling to the skyscraper. That's pretty cool.
Isn't it? I know. Yeah. And it's part of the sort of what we're trying to build out and have people understand. And it's very exciting. And in Alberta, in Canada, North America, arguably, it's a bit rare to kind of have that, like you described, seedling to structure. It's quite a bit of fun. The vertical integration has been, it's a real collaborative approach to manufacturing. So it's been very good.
That's so neat. Yeah. So I'm really curious, what first drew you to this type of work? What kind of, and I know you're like, no personal questions, Aspen.
No, that's great. That's great. Well, okay, funny you should ask that, because my kids asked me that too. So I think when they were doing this, so I gave them a bit of a story. I said, well, when I was 12, my best friend needed a house. So I built them one. And they're like, you built a house 12 years ago. Well, my best friend was a dog, right? So.
Oh, that's so sweet. Sweet.
So I built this doghouse, and that was, I realized, I like building. I like working with wood. I enjoyed it. It was a great little project that, ironically, the doghouse is still around, and don't ask how old it is. It's very old. And then, so from that, I was always, personally, I'm a woodworker. I have projects going on in my garage, nothing of any artistic value or anything that's very nice.
Sure
But I enjoy it, and it's very, very therapeutic. So I've always been interested in woodworking. So this was a natural. I worked as a carpenter for a while. I did a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot of, my very first job actually was surveying in northern Alberta. So, the connection to the outdoors, and as you know, we've talked about this before, I love the outdoors. We're canoers and hikers and all things outdoors. So we really enjoy that. So that connection to the forest was there already. I've always worked, since I graduated from NAIT, I worked in the wood truss industry and then with Western Archrib for the past 27 years, I think.
27 years. Wow,
yes.
Nice.
Yeah, and so I've always that's my whole career and since I was 12.
Yeah, I love that. It's a great origin story. So 27 years at Western Archrib. What have been some of the most significant changes or like some of the biggest things that you've observed in that time?
Okay. Oh yeah. So this, so the one thing that I was not a draftsman, but my observation is we've gone from basically pen and paper. That's when I started at Western. That's what was happening, and then gradually, up to now, there's no pens and paper at Western Archrib. That does not happen anymore for design. It's all gone.
Yeah.
And we're not paperless, but it's because we still have to do the crossword sometimes.
Of course.
But so that was on that side of the business, that's been a huge change in that 27 years. The other one is the CNC technology that goes with it. So that we started out, and the guys in the back were using all powered hand tools to now. There's a very small crew that does the powered hand tools that basically is things that won't fit in the machinery that or too large or just too complex or that the machinery can't cut. That's the only, but probably those workers have gone from sort of being the people on the floor cutting to the CNC operators. So it's an interesting change in that regard.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
And, talking about the move from pen and paper to now digital, I guess, when I had the opportunity to tour your facility, I was amazed by some of the software that the folks upstairs, are they engineers?
Yeah.
Yeah, that the engineers were using to develop and craft and model what these buildings could look like. It's really remarkable.
It is. And then the other piece that goes with that is the BIM, which is an integration with, so the mechanical guy, then he puts his model into this BIM information system, building information modeling, I guess it's called. And so everybody does that, and then it can detect, there's a pipe coming through your beam. There's a problem here. So it sort of detects these things before they even happen on a job site. So theoretically, it's going to save time.
Yeah. One of the other big changes that we touched on a little bit earlier was some of the new policy that's in place for how big we can build our wood buildings. Yes. So what was significant there? What was the change that we saw?
So that was nationally. So they brought mass timber buildings that could be built to 8 and soon to be 12 stories as well, or 12 stories now, pardon me. So that's a mass timber, all mass timber buildings. What's going to change in the next code cycle as well is the encapsulation, and what that means is the amount of drywall that has to be applied to it. The first code cycle was very, very restrictive on how much wood could be exposed. The next code cycle will be much more liberal on in terms of what, and so the uptake on it hasn't been real big, Aspen. But we expect the next time, the next code cycle, it's going to be, because of the more liberal exposure of wood, it'll make a bigger difference.
Right.
Having said that, even the light frame going up to 6 stories, that moved our business too, because now people are, light frame can go 6. Well, we can do mass timber in 6 then for sure. Yeah. And you can do quite a bit more than that. But
yeah. Well, I agree. I think, being able to have more exposed wood in your buildings will encourage people, because that's why you want this material, right? You want to be able to see it in whatever building that it is that you're building. But I think, some of these changes are also such an important recognition of the safety and the viability of this as a building material. It really is a recognition of those features. And so it's fantastic to see that while the progress might not be as quick as we all wish it were, that there is certainly progress in that direction.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not that we get special treatment, wood, so they have to relax. The code is the same for everybody.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter the material. It has to meet the fire resistance rating, the structural properties, and all the lateral resisting systems. So it's the same for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely awesome.
Good.
Andre, this has been a ton of fun having you on my show to chat all about mass timber. Before we wrap up, I want to know, what has you excited for the next 5 years in mass timber?
Oh yeah. So, okay. Well, yeah, I'd say 3 things really that are going to be, changes for us and for the industry. And one is our new facility.
Right.
And that's going to be, top shelf.
Yeah.
And
I can't wait for the next tour.
I know. And the other 2 things, mass timber, the code changes we talked about. We're going to see more and more mass timber, and this is going to, it's going to grow in ways, and we're going to see it in places we didn't expect. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that we, as a business, that we are pursuing very aggressively is sort of expanding our markets. So we've done very well in Western Canada for the past 7 years, and we're pushing further south all the time. So we're going to see a lot of projects in the United States over the next short period of time, and we got a real good opportunity with that, with the new mill.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that is so exciting, Andre. One of the things that I have observed about mass timber, you have to see it to believe it, or see it to fall in love with it. So if people have questions about mass timber, about Western Archrib and your business, or if they want to see some of the incredible projects that you've worked on, where can they find you and learn more?
Yeah, Western Archrib on the website, westernarchrib.ca. Buildings around Edmonton, Meadows Rec Center in Calgary, Windsport, where they do the Olympic hockey teams training, and those are some big ones that are out there. But there's a lot. Go on our website. We got tons that you can call about or go see.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks, Andre. This has been a lot of fun.
Excellent. Thanks for the interview, Aspen.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of Forestry Talks, a podcast that explores all things forestry in Alberta. If you're curious to learn more, check out our website, loveabforest.ca. I'm your host, Aspen Dudzic, and I'll see you next time.
This series is proudly produced by the team at Road 55. Road 55 creates content that connects. For more information, check our website, www.road55.ca.